Mike Woodson and the Indiana Hoosiers are already putting in work for the 2026 recruiting class.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Shout out to all my everydayers, those of you that come back each and every day. You are the reason that we do this. Well, Indiana basketball and head coach Mike Woodson are already hitting the trail in 2026. They've picked up the momentum in 2025 after what was a slow and rather disappointing, I'll say it, disappointing 2024 class. Yes, you brought in Bryson Tucker, but that was after you lost Liam McNeely, who was already committed, who was already signed, and then asked for his NLI, his National Letter of Intent, to be withdrawn. You picked up Bryson Tucker after he was going to play in the developmental leagues of the NBA, and then those disappeared. They don't exist anymore. And so Indiana was able to jump on him, and Bryson Tucker is going to be a phenomenal player. But just one recruit in a single class isn't going to get it done long term. We've seen Indiana jump on the 2025 class. They've gone after kid after kid after kid, and have been in the door with some of the biggest names in the sport across the class of 2025 in high school basketball. But here's what's exciting to me. It's the fact that Indiana is already working in 2026. And a guy by the name of Anthony Thompson, the Ohio native from just next door, is somebody that was originally considered a little undersized, a little underwhelming to a lot of people, but Indiana saw something in Anthony Thompson that they liked. They really liked his play, they liked his style, they liked his charisma, and they were on him very early. Well, he's only in the 2026 class. He's just now turning 16 years old. And he hit a little bit of a growth spurt. And he put in some work, and all of a sudden, here comes everybody else. Now the world has taken notice of 2026 recruit Anthony Thompson. Listen to this quote from him talking about how his height was a little on the wrong side. His strength wasn't where it needed to be. Listen to this. He says, quote, "I've grown about 4 inches since last year, and I probably gained close to 30 pounds. I've been getting into the weight room a lot, just trying to work to get stronger. That's something I knew that I wanted to get better at last year." Goes on to say, "I think I've transformed into a small forward, so I've taken that role to get on the glass for rebounds and block more shots as I've gotten taller. I've taken things from being a shooting guard and used the good stuff from that, but I'm trying to add more to it as I've gotten bigger." And he believes that he can continue to grow a couple of more inches before he graduates high school. So all it took was a little bit of hard work in the weight room and another growth spurt in high school. And everybody's starting to notice, oh, this guy can play. This guy's actually good. And go watch some of his film. Man, his scoring and just his presence with the basketball is really something special. And he was talking about right there how unique it is for him to be a shooting guard that is slowly transitioning into a small forward because of his size. Well, Indiana can use either one of them. And in 2026, here's the crazy thing. In today's world of college basketball, we have no idea what Indiana's roster is going to look like in 2026. We don't know what anybody's roster will look like in 2026. But I'll say this, I'm always down for a solid 3-man, a solid small forward like the Hoosiers have right now, and Mackenzie Mbako. You're excited about what he brings to the position, what he did last year as he got better, and hopefully what he's going to do this year and just absolutely light it up in the Big Ten. And I think a small forward really runs well in Mike Woodson's system because they have to be aggressive on the glass, on rebounding and blocking shots, just like Thompson talked about right there. But you've got to be able to score because you're going to have your options and your opportunities. They're going to pass you the ball. They're going to have sets for you to get open down low. You've got to be able to convert on layups and dunks, get fouled and convert at the free throw line, or step out and knock down some threes, which I know the offense wasn't pretty last year in terms of three-point shooting, but it wasn't by a lack of shots. If you remember, this team shot the ball a lot when they had chances. They just eventually, as the season went on, they just realized, okay, we're terrible at shooting threes. Let's go away from that. But early on, Indiana just missed open threes. So I think the offense is still going to work around a three-point shot, and hopefully a little bit more now that we have actual three-point shooters on the roster. But looking towards the future for when a guy like Anthony Thompson could be here, yeah, that's all going to be expected of him. And look, this is a long way from being done. I mean, we're talking about somebody who just turned 16 years old, who still has 2 years of high school basketball remaining. It's crazy. We're talking about 2026 recruits. I'm not old, but I feel old when I start talking about this guy and start talking about players that are 16 years old that we're already recruiting here in Bloomington. But you know how it is. That's what you have to do nowadays. You have to go and get on these guys early. And I think that's going to help Indiana. I really, really do. I think that's going to help us in terms of being in the final rotation for Anthony Thompson. Now, as I mentioned, numerous schools are all over this kid because of what he can bring, okay? He, in his 16U league, just now turning 16, where he's playing against guys that are at least 1 year, if not 2 years older than him. He averaged 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks, give or take, in 8 Adidas games at 16U. So that's pretty good. And at 6'7", he believes he can continue to grow. That's pretty awesome. And here we go. How about this? 48% from three. I'll take that. Absolutely. And he says, quote, I think I can always get better. I've been working on a lot of my defense. That's something I've worked really hard at. And I feel like I've gotten better, but there's some stuff that I can do better. He's just a raw natural talent. His wingspan is over 7 foot. 7'1" wingspan. Okay. Bring that home. That sounds good to me. His parents played college ball. The guy is just an athletic freak. He has visited Indiana. All right, he has visited here. He was here for the Northwestern game this past season in Bloomington. Says, quote, Assembly Hall was great. I loved the atmosphere. So sounds like he had a pretty good time. Here's the thing. He's also visited these handful of schools: Cincinnati, Xavier, Illinois, Ohio State, Purdue, and West Virginia. So some of the big boys, especially in this conference and around the surrounding states, are already on this kid. But the Hoosiers were on him early, and I think we got a good shot here. I'm excited about him. As I said, this is a long way away from happening, but I wanted to get him on your radar in case you hadn't heard of him. Anthony Thompson in 2026, Indiana, already after him. He's been here for a visit. Time to get him back and time to lock it down as soon as possible. Well, coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, we've got an update on Julian Lewis, the 5-star quarterback who is set to visit Curt Cincinatti and the Hoosiers at the end of this month, about 2 weeks from right now as this video goes live. We'll talk about the latest from Julian Lewis and what the experts are saying about his visit coming up in just a few weeks. That's next on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job that might be open to a perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So what does that mean? It means if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You're not going to do that the old traditional way, sending out and putting flyers on a pole and hoping somebody shows up. No, you need to be on LinkedIn Jobs. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, because 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring right now. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. Your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. If you're new here or if you're returning and you haven't done these things, help me out. Like our video. It helps it get out there to the world so they can all see it. Also, subscribe to the channel. We are, as of right now, as of this recording, we are 7 away from 2,500 subscribers. So if you're not a part of this wonderful family at Locked On Hoosiers, what are you waiting for? It's free. It's easy. Takes just one tap of your thumb. So be sure you do that. And thank you so much on YouTube. For all my audio listeners, follow us on there. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Well, we flip over to football before we get back to basketball to end the show. And we have a little bit of an update on five-star quarterback Julian Lewis. And if you are new to what this situation is, he's a five-star quarterback, one of the most highly rated quarterbacks in the class coming up this season. And he's been committed to USC, Southern California, for quite some time. He's been a long-time, hardcore, locked USC commit. But as of late, as of the last couple of months, he has since opened that up just a little bit. He's still committed to USC. That's a very important factor here. He is still committed, but he has opened it up and wants to at least weigh his options. Now, some of the schools that popped into that were Colorado, Auburn, and a couple of guys over at 247, which I'm very familiar with, started saying that he had a chance to visit Indiana. And these guys were called crazy. Most of the main one was Tom Loy over at 247, the National Football Recruiting site. He said that Indiana had a chance, and everybody absolutely called him crazy. And then all of a sudden, bam, there it is. The news drops that Julian Lewis is set to visit Indiana the weekend of May 31st. And that's huge news. I know that there are some people here who aren't the biggest of football fans in general, but for Indiana football, I cannot tell you how big this is. Julian Lewis is one of the most sought-after quarterbacks in the class, and the fact that not only is he committed to USC, not only is he, let's be honest, probably favored to flip to Auburn right now down in the SEC, he's at least given Curt Cignetti and Indiana football a chance in coming here to visit and check out the place. A five-star quarterback in high school visiting Indiana? That's unheard of. That's uncharted waters for this football program. And so that's why it's important to get everything right. You have to do this the right way. And you only have one chance to make a first impression. You've got to make it a good one. And last week we talked about the facilities that are beginning to be upgraded around the athletic department and around the football complex, and how football is getting a lot of its own things, which I think is absolutely necessary in today's world of college football. And for just the future of the program, man, think about how big this is for first-year head coach Curt Cignetti. You get a guy who's just electric. I put him on the same wavelength as Kyler Murray. That's kind of the comparison that I've made. I have not seen that comparison, but that's kind of where I go with it, because he's just so talented, throwing the ball, making plays, getting away with his legs, and just a freak athlete. He is a fantastic quarterback. And if you're head coach Curt Cignetti, who Julian Lewis says he likes, and there's some serious relationships here. He really likes this coaching staff, and he's interested and at least given us a shot, given us a chance at coming here and at least showing him what we can offer. And if you're Curt Cignetti, man, you've got to be on top of the moon. You've got to be on the clouds right now, because he's at least giving you a shot. And even if you don't get him, okay, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you Julian Lewis is coming to Indiana, you can take my word for it, because I just don't believe that right now. Could it happen? Sure. But as of right now, it's not. But it very well could if this visit goes right. You've got to get it right, though. You have to hit everything perfectly if you're Indiana and Curt Cignetti. But even if you don't land him, the fact that you get somebody like this to visit you is a huge deal in year one. And you can almost use this. You don't want to say, well, we had a guy visit us, so, we're big-time stuff. No, but I say this all the time. High school recruits in any sport, they talk. They know each other. They communicate about everything. So, and they also take notice of a lot. So big time recruits in the future, whether it be for this class or 26, 27, I don't care. They notice when a guy like Julian Lewis takes a visit to Indiana because all of a sudden they start seeing the news, 5-star quarterback Julian Lewis visiting the Indiana Hoosiers. Some kids are going to say, wait, who? They're going to say, what? Where's he going? Where's he visiting? But then they're going to start reading into it a little bit. And they're going to say, huh, Julian Lewis. Isn't he committed to USC, right? He's a USC commit. What's he doing going and visiting other schools? What's going on in Indiana? Why is he visiting there? And then they start to question. And then if it goes well and good news starts coming out about it, then those players start to say, maybe I should check that out. I've heard from them. They called me months ago, a year ago, but it's a new staff. Maybe I should reach out to them and see what's going on in Indiana. And boom, that's how it starts. That's how the flame gets going. That's how you light it and it starts to take off. And that's so important in recruiting. It's not all about this, but word of mouth is so big in high school recruiting because, again, they all talk, man. They all know each other, and they want to help each other out, and they're going to say, hey, man, how'd your visit go? Hey, what'd you like? Hey, what are you going over there for? And that's how it starts. So you build that positive rapport with kids that you don't even know, with future recruits in these classes, and that goes for any sport, but, man, football needs it desperately. Football needs it desperately, and it may take a 5-star quarterback like Julian Lewis just to take a visit to get the outlook, right? The perspective of everybody else and their opinion on Indiana football to rise and take a step up so then other kids begin to take that chance too. Then you start getting commits, you start developing, you start winning games, boom, boom, boom. That's how the process works. And so will Julian Lewis end up at Indiana? I don't know. Probably not, if we're just being honest. But he's taking a visit, and that's a huge step. He's only taken a few visits. It's going to be Indiana, Auburn, Colorado. He's going back to USC. So there's some big boy players in this thing, but the Hoosiers are right there for 5-star quarterback Julian Lewis. Well, coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, final segment of the show, we'll revisit Indiana's basketball schedule. And I know we don't have the actual schedule, but we do know who, we do know where, because more of these are starting to trickle out across college basketball. And look, it gets me excited to talk about basketball, and it gets me excited for the season. So we'll talk about that coming up next on Locked On Hoosiers. Final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. And shout out again to my everydayers. You are the reason that we do this show each and every day. So be sure that you're liking the video on YouTube, subscribing to our channel. If you're on audio, my everydayers there too. Thank you so much. Well, we've talked about this in the past, and I wanted to revisit it, talking about Indiana's basketball schedule coming up for 2024 and 2025. Now, we do not know the actual schedule. We don't know how everything's going to lay out. We still don't know a lot of our non-conference schedule, but what we do have is the Big Ten opponents coming up for the Big Ten schedule this season. The one thing we do know in non-conference play is we'll be in the battle for Atlantis, which, man, I'm so excited for this. I mean, this is going to be a lot of fun. It's the week of November 27th, 28th, and 29th. So right there in the middle of Feast Week, right there around Thanksgiving. And man, that's one of my favorite weeks of the year. I love Feast Week. Right there in Thanksgiving, where everybody's out of school and off of work, and you can just sit and watch some football, but I'm always off to the side watching some great non-conference college basketball games. And listen to the teams that are going to be in this thing, in this massive tournament down in Nassau in the Bahamas. Arizona, Creighton, Davidson, Gonzaga, Indiana, Louisville, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. So, yeah, those are pretty big-time programs. Arizona, yeah, they're okay. They're just, one of the best teams in college basketball. Creighton out of the Big East, still doing what they do. Davidson, always a sneaky team to make the tournament. Gonzaga, we know what they do. We know what they are. Indiana, of course, we're an up-and-comer trying to make a statement this year. Would really like to see Louisville get back to being good. I mean, I'm a firm believer that college basketball was better when Louisville was better. And God, they've been horrible for so long now. Oklahoma, if you remember, a new member of the SEC coming up this season in college basketball, starts with college football. So remember that. You'll have a shot at an SEC team. And then West Virginia, who is trying to just get back to any sort of relevancy and get back into the news for any type of good reason after what was a disaster with Bob Huggins. So this is a really good tournament, man. It's going to be a lot of fun for Indiana coming up in that last week of November. And then here's what we have for Indiana in terms of the home games in Big Ten play, the road games in Big Ten play, and the homes and homes. Okay, here are the three teams that you'll play in Bloomington and on the road. You'll play these three teams twice: Penn State, Ohio State, and Purdue. No surprise, no shock there. That's just about how it normally goes. Penn State, time to get revenge. Ohio State, you're going to be better than them, but they've gotten a little bit better. And look, I think they're going to be good with the new coach, and you'll have to watch out for them coming up this season. And then Purdue, we know that. I don't have to tell you about the Purdue series. I think if you split, I think you're in a good spot. Split it. Win at home. If you lose on the road, oh well, you move on. Here's what the Hoosiers have coming up for away games, and then I'll tell you about the home games. On the road, and the only time you'll play these teams is on the road this season: Iowa, Michigan State, Nebraska, Northwestern, Wisconsin, and two of the newcomers, Oregon and Washington. And look, all things considered, I don't hate it. I don't hate your road games, the ones that you're only playing on the road. Iowa, it's a tough place to play, but you should be better than them. Michigan State, same thing. Nebraska, you should win. Northwestern, you should win. Oregon and Washington, those are going to be a little bit tougher. Those are a little bit up in the air because, let's be real, we don't fully know what we're going to get out of those teams and how they're going to perform in their first year of Big Ten basketball. But those are tough road trips, man. I mean, you're going across the country almost if you're the Hoosiers to go out and play in Eugene and Seattle. So, look, if you want to split those, I'm cool with that. That's fine with me. And then on the road in Madison, Wisconsin, that's a tough game too. And not one that we can't win, but just always a tough place to play up there. It's a great atmosphere. It's a great team, great program. And so that one definitely worries me in terms of playing the Badgers on the road. Here's what the Hoosiers get at home. And this is like an attackable par four. This is like you step up on the tee box and you get your driver out and you're ready to go after the green and hit it towards the pin. Okay. Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Rutgers, UCLA, and USC. Two things here. One, this is really exciting. There are some great teams and some much improved teams this coming season on that home schedule. I look at Michigan and I look at Rutgers as those two teams, and you could throw Maryland in there too, that are going to be a better team this year than they were a year ago. But guess what? Are they better than Indiana roster-wise? No, they're not. You should beat Michigan and Maryland and Minnesota and Rutgers, okay? Then you get two of the other newcomers, UCLA and USC. So then the next year you'll go and play UCLA, USC out there, and you'll get Oregon and Washington at home. USC is going to be interesting because Eric Musselman's a really good coach, and I'm sure you saw the news about Bronny James going to the NBA and staying in the draft. I don't blame him. He's going to get drafted somewhere. Is he going to survive in the NBA? No, but he's going to go play with his dad. He's going to make a few million, and then he'll go and do something else with his life. And you know what? Good for him. UCLA, on the other hand, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and tell you and act like I know a lot about what UCLA is going to be next season. But they're always talented, and that'll be a fun team to have inside of Assembly Hall. So excited to see them make the trip. And then you also play Illinois, which that's always a tough game. It really is. That's a tough game where you've got to play your best basketball each and every time you play the Fighting Illini. But man, I start looking at this schedule and at least the teams on it, right? Because again, we don't know when and what the situation is going to be in terms of the schedule, but I see a lot of wins on here. I see a lot of wins on this schedule. Given our roster, given how much it's going to be improved and how much better I think just the whole system is going to run for Indiana basketball this season, I'm seeing a lot of wins on here. Now, if it stacks up to where, yeah, you've got to go and play Purdue at home before you fly out and play Oregon and Washington and then return home and play Illinois, like, yeah, you're probably going to have a loss or two in there. And it just depends on how it all stacks up, if you get hosed by the Big Ten or not. But just looking at it in a vacuum, and if you were to just check these off one by one and either green check mark or a red X, I'd give more green checks than red X's. That's for sure. I think you have a chance to be really good this season and flirting with the top 5, top 3 of the Big Ten, which is harder to do now because there's 4 new teams and who knows how many more coming in the future. But I like the teams, and I like how we're playing them home, away, and then the 1-and-1s. Now it's just time to see how the schedule lines up when it's all said and done and all put together. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Look, as always, I appreciate you being here. We're having a lot of fun. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel already, please do that. Help us out. By the time this comes out, and hopefully by tomorrow in the next episode, we'll be at 2,500. I want you to be a part of that. So thank you so much for that. Like the video, send it out to your family and friends if they're Hoosier fans. Also, if you're on audio, follow us on there too. Be sure you turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Until tomorrow, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.